Let's turn to our subject, to happier matters, which are the adventures of Yaakov Avinu in his journey. Now he's on the run because Esav has expressed his intention to kill his brother Yaakov when the opportunity arises, that is to say, when Yitzchak, their father, has died. But of course, Yitzchak has already said that he doesn't know when his day of death will arrive. Of course, none of us know, but the implication is he was elderly, he was feeble. In any case, Yaakov realized it was time to get out of town. His mother urged him, his father urged him. So Yaakov is off to Haran. Vayetzei Yaakov Be'ersheva, Vayelech Haran. He is heading towards Haran. The Torah says, he encountered the place, and he slept the night there, or he prepared to spend the night because the sun had set. And it says there that he had a dream, very well known, one of the most famous images probably in all of the Torah, dare I say in all of world literature even, the image of the ladder. Yaakov is sleeping, the ladder extends from earth to heaven, the angels are ascending and descending, and Hashem is, so to speak, positioned at the top of the ladder. So if you're following the Chumash, I hope you are. You can find us, if you got the art scroll, it's Stone Chumash, page 144. But any Chumash in the world will take you there. At the beginning of Parasha Vayetzei, which is chapter 28, Pasuk Yud Gimel, V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Okay, he gives him a blessing. Hashem gives to Yaakov a blessing. V'haya zarcha, Pasuk Yud Dalet, verse 14. V'haya zaracha ka'afar haaretz. Your descendants, your progeny will be as afar haaretz, as the dust of the earth, or as the earth itself. So the simple understanding of this, of ufaratzta, they will spread out to all directions. In other words, you, Yaakov, will be the patriarch of a numerous nation of children, descendants, etc. This is a blessing, of course, essentially linking Yaakov as the next position in the chain, the foundation of the Jewish people, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and indeed he gets a bracha which is akin to that of Abraham. The only thing is Abraham received a bracha about the stars of the heaven, and many have observed Yaakov is given a bracha how numerous his descendants will be, but they're likened to the dust of the earth. What happened to the stars of heaven? So we have spoken about this in the past. But my friend for the year, ha-Kabbalah, the subject of our studies in the Thursday night shiur, says kafar haaretz, if it is intended in terms of how a multitudinousness, how numerous, how many your descendants will be, which is the simple understanding, because Yaakov at that time is already a mature person, he is unmarried, he has no progeny, he has no prospects for any progeny unless he finds a wife. Ultimately, he gets more than one wife, but as of then, he's a fugitive, he is, you could say, down and out, and Hashem assures him of his glorious future and that of his descendants. So says ha-Kabbalah, if the reference is just to how numerous his offspring will be, he says then it would definitely, and that's how Onkelos, by the way, understands. If you take a look at Onkelos, v'yehov benach sagiyin ka'afrodara, they will be numerous as Aphrodara, as the dust of the earth. If that's the case, of course, it's only a guzma, it has to be an exaggeration. It's completely impossible for his descendants to be as numerous as the dust of the earth. Excuse me, this is evident, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. The Torah using dramatic language, picturesque language, evocative language, but of course it would be an exaggeration. He says there's another possibility as well, which is found in the Medrash and other sources. Rabbeinu Bechaya says it also, and that is that it is a symbol of the endurance of your progeny. Your progeny will be possibly walked upon as the earth is walked upon, but they will prevail. They will outlive their enemies. Rabbeinu Bechaya says that just as the earth literally buries those who walk upon it, you will bury your enemies as well. You will survive, you will endure, you will outlive your most powerful and hostile antagonists. You will outlive them, and you literally will bury them as the earth buries its those who walk upon it. ha-Kabbalah puts it in a little bit different language. He quotes the Medrash that just as a metal implement which is buried in the soil will eventually turn to rust. Nowadays, you got stainless steel, lasts quite a lot longer, but classically, even iron or copper, other metals, eventually they rust, they decompose in the earth. The earth, however, never decomposes. The earth itself is always there. But then he suggests something new, new for me, which is more positive, which I like very much. He says that afar haaretz, the soil, the earth, Mother Earth, is the source of life. Without it, we cannot survive. This is not something which the ecologists of the 21st century innovated. Of course, this is a recognition which the ancients had as well. The earth is the source of survival. Food plants that grow from the earth enable humankind, and indeed, for that matter, all of life to continue and to endure. So your descendants will be as crucial, as indispensable for life itself as the earth. Just as the earth is the only means for physical, for let's say corporeal, for terrestrial survival, the descendants of Yaakov will be the ones to bring the God consciousness to the world. They will be the means by which mankind is uplifted and nourished spiritually, by introducing mankind to the one God, by introducing the principles of society, of civilization itself to mankind, will be through the descendants of Yaakov. This Vayazarcha Kafaras, just as Afar Haaretz is indispensable for survival, your progeny, your descendants will be so as well. Yaakov beholds this remarkable prophetic dream, a dream full of encouragement, assurances even. Hashem says, I will not abandon you until I bring you back to this land. Ad asher imasisi until I do what I have said that I will do for you. This is an assurance from Hashem himself, which, of course, is naturally going to transform Yaakov through what he has learned and through the promises and the gifts that have been bestowed upon him. What's interesting, though, is that Yaakov's attention is focused not on the content of the prophecy, but the experience itself. Take a look at Pasuk Tes Zayin, verse 16. Vaikatz Yaakov mishnaso vayomer. Yaakov awoke from his sleep. Vayomer, and he said, Achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. Achein, surely Hashem is present in this place, and I did not know. V'anochi lo yadati. Rashi says, Vanochi lo yadati, I did not know. The implication is because it's juxtaposed with waking up from his sleep. He slept, he had a dream, he awoke, and he said right away, how awesome is this place? He says that as well. But first he says, God is in this place. Vanochi lo yadati. Says Rashi, if I had known, I would not have slept. I would not have slept in such a holy place. Rashi says, if I had known, I would not have slept in such a holy place. I would not have slept here. Says ha-Kabbalah, a very simple question. Does it really make sense for Yaakov to say, the first thing he says is, if I had known this was a holy place, I would not have slept. Would he have foregone the prophecy, the encounter with God? He only had that encounter because he slept. Of course, it was a prophetic dream. If he had been up at night checking his email or preparing for his onward journey, or whatever practical matters or spiritual matters even, he would not have had that encounter. The dream, the prophetic experience was because he slept. Besides which, the dream was, the land upon which you lie, I would give it to you. And the Talmud says, Rashi quotes it as well, that all of the land of Israel, so to speak, was like rolled up under him, as if to say, the land upon which you sleep, it's all going to be yours, the entirety of the land of Israel. If he hadn't slept, he wouldn't have had that. If he was sitting or standing or walking, that prophecy, that promise would not have come his way. Besides which, and this is a subtle observation, which I think is very valid. Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. Behold, or surely Hashem is in this place. If the emphasis is on the place, he should have said, Achen b'makom hazeh yesh Hashem. In this place, there is God. Because the part of a statement, which is the nub of it, the essence of it, the most important part is said first. And he gives a few examples of that. If the emphasis was, how holy is this place, then he should have said, Achen hamakom hazeh kadosh, I'm sorry, Achen b'makom hazeh yesh Hashem. In this place there is God. The fact that he says there is God in this place puts the emphasis on his encounter with Hashem. He says the emphasis here is, he wakes up with a start and he says, Yesh Hashem, there is God. Now, of course, there's no doubt that Yaakov knew about God. He was, I'm certain, had a very profound and sophisticated and passionate relationship with God. He grew up in the home of Yitzchak and Rivka. He was a grandson of Abraham. Abraham was still alive when Yaakov turned 15. So he had ample opportunity to be initiated into a relationship with Hashem. Nevertheless, what he meant was, I never had a prophetic experience. This is the first time that God appeared to me, certainly in the Torah, that we'd have no earlier instance of it. Therefore, Yaakov wakes up and he says, Achen yesh Hashem, there is God. I was not aware that it's possible for a person, at least for me, to achieve this kind of prophetic experience, b'makom hazeh, meaning ba'olam hazeh, in this world. While I'm still alive in this terrestrial existence, I didn't realize that I could have this kind of close encounter with God. And therefore, he doesn't even initially relate at all to the contents of the dream, the prophecy and the assurance and the promise, but he is still like in shock and in awe of the encounter itself. The experience itself is the message. Like they say, the medium is the message. The fact that Hashem revealed himself to Yaakov, he's still I don't want to say traumatized, but he's still in awe of that experience. And therefore, according to ha-Kabbalah, that's why he says, Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, even in this world. But there's more to that as well, because he goes further. And he says that what Yaakov meant in his exclamation, Vayikatz, he woke with a start, and he said, Yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, v'anochi lo yadati, and I didn't know. What does he mean, Anochi lo yadati? He says that I'm not worthy of prophecy. Of course, he knew there is such a thing as prophecy. Excuse me. He probably was aware that Yitzchak, his father, Avram, his grandfather, they had prophetic experiences. If it's mentioned in the Torah, there's every reason to expect that Yaakov was aware as well. But in his humility, in his sense of his own modesty, he thought that I haven't reached the level of that kind of apprehension, that kind of spiritual exaltedness. Va'anochi lo yadati. I think there's a remez here. Va'anochi, I don't even know the first words in the Ten Commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. It's the foundation of our faith. In his, again, humility, he said, Va'anochi lo yadati. I don't know anything about God. I haven't reached that level. I haven't ascended to that exalted level of being a prophet or receiving a prophecy. The Zohar alludes to this as well, and I think that is the meaning. Va'anochi lo yadati, that I don't even know Hashem, and I had this experience. It can only be because, as he says in the next pasuk, Vayira Vayomar, and he said, Ma norah hamakom hazeh. So according to this approach, he wakes up with a start and he says, Achen yesh Hashem, there is God, and I've had an encounter with God. But makom hazeh, meaning in olam hazeh. Vanochi lo yadati, I'm not worthy. I haven't ascended that to that level of profound or advanced, sophisticated understanding. Even though in actuality, of course, he did, but in his humility, he didn't imagine that he was deserving of it. He therefore says it must be that the place is responsible for it. And he says, Mano rahamakom hazeh. Excuse me, take a look at the next pasuk. 17, Vayira, and he, so in the art school it says, and he became frightened. Vayira, he became frightened, and he said, Manara hamakom hazeh, how awesome is this place? Vayira comes from the word yira, which is fear. And we do have exactly the same word later on in the life of Yaakov. In fact, they even make the zemer about it. Al tira avdi Yaakov, do not be afraid, avdi Yaakov. Which actually is a pasuk in, I think in Nevi'im, I think in Trei Asar maybe. But in any case, Yaakov is associated with Yira, with fear. Vayira leYaakov ma'od. Yaakov was very fearful later on when he was going to encounter Esav, and he was mortified at the prospect because he heard that Esav is approaching him with 400 thugs, and it says Vayira leYaakov ma'od. Yaakov was very afraid. He was afraid of harm. He was afraid. Okay, we'll talk about that maybe next week when we get to it. But the point is that fear is a fear of harm that may befall me, misfortune or circumstances that I rue and that I'm terrified of. That is fear of the sort that we can, I'm sure, all relate to in various experiences that we may have had. Says ha-Kabbalah, it can't be that is the meaning here. Even though it says Vayira, and he was afraid and he was frightened, that's how the art school people render it, but it says ha-Kabbalah, it actually doesn't make that much sense. Why should he be afraid? What is there to be afraid? He has just received the most sublime promises and assurances. He's been vouchsafed his security, his survival, the fact that he will become the father, the progenitor, the patriarch of a great nation. He'll be able to return eventually to his homeland. He's going into exile now, but he will return. What is there to be afraid of? Of course, I think we can all recognize that it doesn't mean fear of harm, fear of suffering, fear of misfortune, fear of loss, fear of punishment. It means, as ha-Kabbalah says, yiras haromamus. It is not fear, but it is awe. It is, as I said in the title of our little shir tonight, shock and awe. Yaakov is filled with awe, and he says, Ma norah hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? Ma norah hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? Ma norah. Says, I just want to elaborate a little bit more, though, about this idea of yiras haromamus. The Rambam speaks about different types of a relationship with God. There is yiras ha'onesh, fear of punishment. A person may serve God miyira, out of fear. That means to say fear of the consequences if he doesn't serve God. He may have a reason to believe, I would say good reason to believe, that if he lives his life in a villainous, iniquitous manner, he will pay the price, whether in this world or the next world. He will be subject to divine punishment. It's like a person is afraid of the law or afraid of his boss or his manager for realizing his ineptitude or his corruption, whatever it might be. Of course, that, says the Rambam, is a very low level. It's a very basic level. The Rambam says such a form of fear of God is not really worthy of any intelligent, sophisticated individual. but it is maybe a basic level. Of course, that is the kind of fear which we cannot attribute to Yaakov. Rather, it's yiras haromamus. It is fear of the glory of God, of the greatness of God. It is awe. It is a sense of the imminence of Hashem. And actually, if you think about it, so much of life, so much of avodas Hashem is exactly that, is the level of yira. It's maybe beginning at a basic level, beginning at a level which may be appropriate, let's say, for a young child, even for a toddler who needs to learn about danger, about behavior which is to be avoided, on pain of punishment. And it may be inevitable that a young child, to a certain degree, can only be taught through a fear of punishment. Obviously, we want to provide rewards as well. Positive reinforcement is always more effective. Okay, that I think we can agree upon. But a person needs to go beyond that. A person's relation with Hashem should not be predicated on fear of punishment. That's what we call yiras haromos. I would like to suggest that even the rungs of the ladder symbolize exactly that. Yaakov is on the ground. He's dreaming. The ladder has its feet in the ground, and it extends up to heaven. And the angels are ascending and descending. The rungs of that ladder, I would suggest, symbolize the levels of yiras shamayim, of fear of heaven. But it's not fear, it really is awe. As we say, it's yiras haromamus. So Vayira, Yaakov awoke and he said, Ma norah hamakom hazeh, how awesome is this place. Says ha-Kabbalah, Ma norah, the word norah means that he is ascribing his prophetic encounter not to his own greatness or to his own worthiness, but rather just the place itself. He says, I didn't realize that I'm in this holy place, a place which is brings with it, has innate within it, latent within this place is the potential for spiritual achievement, spiritual encounter. And of course, we know that that place was the Makom HaMikdash, where centuries later the Beis HaMikdash would be built. This is Har HaBayis, and anyone who has visited the Kotel, particularly if he or she can remember perhaps the first time that he was there, there is a sense of awe, a sense of being in a holy place, a sense of proximity to Hashem, which a person can achieve there. And in some ways, in some respects, in other contexts as well, in a mikdash ma'at, if a person is inspired by going to shul or venturing into Mir Yeshiva or another great yeshiva, and one feels swept away in the energy and the spirituality there. That's what Yaakov is saying. He doesn't want to attribute the greatness to himself, and therefore he says, "It's man norah hamakom hazeh." How awesome is this place? ha-Kabbalah says the word norah is related to the word ner, meaning lamp, or the word or, of course, is light, or menorah, which is a candelabrum. Manorah, this place is luminescent, I would say. It doesn't mean it literally, it means it figuratively. This place where I have slept, where I've had this nevuah, it's because I'm in this particular location. Just like in modern Hebrew, by the way, a light bulb is called nura, nun, vav, reish, aleph, nura with a malapum. Nura in modern Hebrew is a light bulb, is a lamp, something which provides light. So by way of analogy, Yaakov says, Manorah, this is a place where the spiritual light is sublime. This is a place where a person is able to see spiritually. I mean, he was sleeping, but the light of that place, says Yaakov, has enabled me to see Hashem himself. So this is what I would like to accomplish tonight in our shiur tonight. We have a few minutes for a quick review, as we like to do. We said kafar haaretz, the blessing that Hashem gives to Yaakov is initially few blessings, but one of them is havaya zaracha kafar haaretz. So the simple understanding is they will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. At a deeper level, though, no pun intended, it means that just as the earth buries those who walk upon it, similarly you will bury your enemies. It's a bracha of survival. It's not necessarily a bracha of transcendence at this point, but it is a bracha of survival. That your descendants will be kafaratz. You'll always be there. You will exist as long as planet Earth endures. But then at a deeper level, further, we said, or maybe in a more positive way, we said, kafaratz, your descendants will be as essential for the well-being of mankind and of life itself as Mother Earth is. Your descendants will do that for mankind in the spiritual realm, by introducing the principle of ethical monotheism, the idea of social justice, the idea of respect for every person, human dignity, the idea of the divine component within every human being. These are among the fundamental teachings of the Torah, which have indeed become quite widespread in mankind. So that's Vayazar ha-Kaparatz. We also said Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. The emphasis is yesh Hashem. I didn't realize that I, in my humility and in my inadequacy, says Yaakov, was able to have this encounter with God. Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, and the emphasis is on the opportunity, the possibility of a person on this earth having such an encounter. Va'anochi lo yadati. I don't even know Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I don't know the first thing. I'm not able to even apprehend anything about Hashem. Again, in his humility, Va'anochi lo yadati. I have no knowledge. I have no capacity for that. It must be because of the place. It must be the place. Manaraha makom hazeh. This is the place that has given that offers that opportunity, that is the catalyst for having such an experience. And we said vayira, that he was frightened, doesn't mean frightened. It means that he was filled with awe. It was yiras haromamus. It was fear of the exalted nature of Hashem. He was in awe of his spiritual encounter, and this is symbolized, I would suggest, by the rungs of the ladder, each rung one upon the other, that a person must aspire to ascending the ladder of Yiras Shamayim, of fear of heaven, to transcend and leave behind the simplistic fear of punishment or craving for reward, but rather it's the relationship with Hashem which a person should crave. And this is the greatness of Yaakov and of all who follow in the path of Yaakov. And finally, we said, Man norah hamakom hazeh. Norah is a lashon of nura, like a light. There is spiritual luminescence in this place. And in the light of that spirituality, one can see and perceive and behold great things. Thank you very much. And